Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The World Health Organization warns the coronavirus pandemic is accelerating, with cases recorded in at least 184 of 195 countries. There are nearly 385,000 confirmed cases worldwide and over 16,500 deaths. World Health Organization's Director General says he would address world leaders this week and request global powers coordinate efforts to fight the pandemic and increase production of protective gear for frontline healthcare workers. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres Monday called for a global ceasefire to, quote, end the sickness of war and focus all the world's resources on fighting the pandemic.
Our world faces a common enemy, COVID-19. The virus does not care about nationality or ethnicity, faction or face. It attacks all relentlessly. Meanwhile, armed conflict rages on around the world. The most vulnerable, women and children, people with disabilities, the marginalized and displaced, pay the highest price. They are also at the highest risk of suffering devastating losses from COVID-19.
In Europe, Italy's death toll has topped 6,000, with nearly 64,000 confirmed cases as Italy remains in near-total lockdown. In a slight glimmer of hope, Italy recorded a lower daily increase of cases for the second day in a row Monday. Spain continues to be hit hard by the pandemic, recording over 460 deaths Monday, the biggest daily number so far for Spain. Officials say nearly 4,000 health workers have been infected with the coronavirus in Spain, amounting to more than 1 in 10 of all confirmed cases. Spain's defense minister said soldiers called in to help with the outbreak have reported finding older people dead and abandoned in nursing homes. France reported a surge of 186 coronavirus deaths Monday, raising the death toll to 860. People in France are under strict lockdown orders and are required to show paperwork when outside of their homes, indicating the purpose of their outing. In Britain, Prime Minister Boris Johnson ordered people to only leave their homes for food or other essential needs and is restricting public gatherings to no more than 2 people. Police will enforce the measures with fines by breaking up larger groups. Here in the United States, as recorded fatalities exceed 100 for the first time Monday, President Trump said America will be open for business very soon and suggested the U.S. could dramatically change the approach to handling the pandemic.
We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself. We're not going to let the cure be worse than the problem. At the end of the 15-day period, we'll make a decision as to which way we want to go, where we want to go, the timing, and essentially we're referring to the timing of the opening, essentially the opening of our country.
Trump's message was in stark contrast to the United Nations, public health experts, and other heads of state around the world. This is Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
We've all seen the pictures online of people who seem to think they're invincible. Well, you're not. Enough is enough. Go home and stay home.
And this is British Prime Minister Boris Johnson Monday.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home. Because the critical thing we must do to stop the disease spreading between households.
President Trump also said if solving the pandemic were up to doctors, they would, quote, keep the world shut for a couple of years, unquote. This comes as reports say Trump is growing impatient with Dr. Anthony Fauci, head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, who has had to correct Trump's repeated falsehoods about the pandemic. Fauci was not present at Monday evening's press briefing. 16 states around the United States have so far announced or enacted stay-at-home orders affecting over 40% of the U.S. population as coronavirus cases start to overwhelm hospitals and threaten severe medical supply shortages. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said Monday the military is getting ready to deploy field hospitals to New York and Seattle, and the first of 2 military hospital ships was dispatched Monday to increase hospital bed capacity. Louisiana Governor Governor John Bel Edwards warned his state is seeing the fastest growth rate in coronavirus cases in the world and that Louisiana could become the next Italy. Over 1,000 cases have been identified, over half in New Orleans, with 35 deaths statewide. Louisiana's stay-at-home order went into effect Monday. Texas has become the latest state to attack reproductive freedoms amidst the coronavirus crisis, as Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton ordered abortion providers stop performing the procedure, claiming they're not medically necessary. Medical providers could face fines or even jail time for violating the order. In other news from Texas, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick rejected the idea of social distancing, urging a swift return to work, saying older people who are much more vulnerable to the virus should sacrifice for the country's economy. In Arizona, a man has died and his wife is in critical condition after the couple took chloroquine to try to prevent a coronavirus infection. The anti-malarial drug has been touted as a possible treatment for the coronavirus by President Trump, but it has not been approved by the FDA or the World Health Organization for that use. The American Society of Health System Pharmacists added hydroxychloroquine, a derivative of chloroquine, to a list of drug shortages last week, following Trump's statements. The World Health Organization Director General urged people not to use untested drugs to treat COVID-19.
There is currently no treatment that has been proven to be effective against COVID-19. It's great to see the level of energy now being directed to research and development against COVID-19. Small observational and non-randomized studies will not give us the answers we need. Using untested medicines without the right evidence could raise false hope and even do more harm than good.
In New York, officials with the Office of Refugee Resettlement have refused to free migrant children who are currently being held in 2 facilities where staff members tested positive for coronavirus. The officials say they will not be released to sponsors who are usually family members until quarantines at the facilities are lifted. New Jersey said it would start releasing as many as 1,000 prisoners from county jails starting today to limit the spread of the coronavirus. In New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio said Monday 75 prisoners have already been released and officials are reviewing cases of hundreds more. At Rikers Island, 39 coronavirus cases have been reported among prisoners, 21 among staff as of Monday. Meanwhile, in Chicago, local authorities say they're planning to release low-risk prisoners after 2 prisoners at Cook County Jail tested positive for COVID-19. A corrections officer at the facility also recently tested positive for the coronavirus. New York remains the epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic in the United States, now accounts for more than 5% of all cases around the world. The total number of confirmed cases stands at over 23,000 this morning. The attack rate, or the percentage of the population infected with the virus, is nearly 1 in 1,000 in New York, 5 times higher than in other parts of the United States. Over 180 New Yorkers have died. The pace of deaths is expected to accelerate. On Monday, the Brooklyn Democracy Academy announced the passing of the school's principal, Desanne Romaine, due to complications from COVID-19. She was just 36 years old. She's the first public school employee in New York known to have died from coronavirus. Governor Andrew Cuomo said New York is now able to test 16,000 people a day. At a daily news briefing, Cuomo ordered New York hospitals to increase their capacity by 50%. The Javits Convention Center is expected to be converted into an additional hospital this week to start handling the overflow of coronavirus patients. Cuomo again urged the federal government to take decisive action to send emergency funding to New York, as well as to produce and distribute much-needed medical supplies.
Let the federal government put in place the Federal Defense Production Act. It does not nationalize any industry. All it does is say to a factory, You must produce this quantity. That's all it does.
In other parts of the country, governors and local officials are clamoring for much-needed supplies. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer said Monday a recent shipment of personal protective equipment, or PPE, from the national stockpile was barely enough to cover one shift at one hospital. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said 400 ventilators from the federal stockpile were sent to New York City to help treat the growing number of patients. Governor Cuomo also announced Monday New York will be the first state to test a coronavirus treatment that involves injecting blood plasma from recovered COVID-19 patients into individuals fighting off the disease. Puerto Rico passed a record $787 million financial package to fight the economic hit caused by the pandemic. Measures include a 3-month moratorium on mortgage payments, as well as other loans, bonuses for essential service providers such as medical staff and police, and improving remote education by buying tablets and educational tools. Governor Wanda Vasquez also said Puerto Rico's public sector employees will keep getting paid, and small businesses and self-employed workers will receive cash to cope with the crisis. In Washington, D.C., Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said Monday they are close to a $2 trillion deal and expect to come to an agreement sometime today. Earlier Monday, Senate Democrats again rejected a coronavirus relief bill, which they said did not have enough worker protection and created a slush fund to bail out corporations. When asked who would provide oversight for corporate bailouts at Monday night's press briefing, Trump responded, "I'll be the oversight." The hashtag #NotDyingForWall Street is trending on Twitter. Calls have been mounting to allow remote voting so that lawmakers can avoid gathering and potentially spreading the virus. Meanwhile, Congress members Ayanna Pressley and Ilhan Omar unveiled a bill to cancel $30,000 of student debt for all borrowers during the crisis. In an unprecedented move to salvage the U.S. economy, the Federal Reserve said Monday it would buy unlimited amounts of Treasury bonds and mortgage-backed securities and extend loans to businesses. The Labor Department is expected to report next week that a record-breaking 3 million Americans have filed first-time claims for unemployment. The president of the St. Louis Federal Reserve predicted the U.S. employment rate could hit 30% in the coming weeks and months. The coronavirus death toll in Iran is approaching 2,000, with nearly 25,000 confirmed cases. President Hassan Rouhani blamed U.S. sanctions for the devastating toll the virus has had in Iran as the crumbling medical infrastructure is struggling to keep up with new cases. The number of coronavirus cases in Pakistan has topped 900, with 7 deaths, prompting the government to ban all international flights. Saudi Arabia has the highest number of infections in the Gulf region, with over 560 confirmed cases. It imposed a nationwide curfew Monday. In Africa, the virus has been spreading quickly, with confirmed COVID-19 cases surpassing 1,700 across 45 countries. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa announced a 3-week national lockdown Monday as South Africa confirmed more than 550 cases, the highest number in sub-Saharan Africa. In Zimbabwe, prominent 30-year-old television journalist Zororo Makamba has died after contracting COVID-19. He reportedly contracted the virus while he was recently visiting New York. In West Africa, Senegal and Ivory Coast Monday each declared states of emergency as they grapple to stem the spread of the virus. Japanese television is reporting Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will propose a 1-year postponement of the Tokyo Olympic Games during talks with the International Olympic Committee. Indonesia reported over 100 cases Tuesday, marking its biggest daily surge. Indonesia now has nearly 700 confirmed cases, at least 55 deaths. Meanwhile, China has announced it will lift the lockdown on Wuhan, the city where the first COVID-19 infections were reported on April 8th. They will lift it after 2 months of quarantine. Other lockdowns will be lifted Wednesday across other cities in Hubei province. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced the U.S. is cutting $1 billion of aid to Afghanistan after he failed to make any headway on his visit Monday. Afghanistan has been in political turmoil as Afghan President Ashraf Ghani and rival Abdullah both claimed they won last year's election. The fragile Afghan peace deal has also stalled over a disagreement between the government and the Taliban on the release of thousands of prisoners. In immigration news, BuzzFeed News reports a 42-year-old man from Mexico died at a hospital while in the custody of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, in Texas. His death is the 10th since October, the second to occur just 3 days after the death by an apparent suicide of a 27-year-old Honduran man at the Carnes Detention Center last week. In California, Pacific Gas and Electric announced it pleaded guilty to 84 counts of involuntary manslaughter for its role in the devastating 2018 Camp Fire, which killed 85 people and burned the town of Paradise to the ground. And in Colorado, Governor Jared Polis signed into law a bill abolishing the death penalty, commuting the sentences of 3 men on Colorado's death row to life in prison. Colorado joins 21 states in the District of Columbia, which have already banned the death penalty. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman, reporting from here in New York City, the epicenter of the pandemic in the United States, with Juan Gonzalez joining me as co-host in New Brunswick, New Jersey, where he teaches at nearby Rutgers University. Welcome, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and good day to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world in these terrible times of the coronavirus epidemic, where that's transformed life for people all around the globe. Of course, I teach journalism here at Rutgers, and the campus has been closed for more than 10 days now. We just began remote teaching to the students yesterday, a whole new experiment as millions of people are basically learning online. Students in colleges and high schools and public schools around the country are learning online for the first time, and we'll see how that goes. But meanwhile, we've got to deal with these transformed times of ours.